Hi, I'm Ben, and welcome to my book corner. We have another book review for you for Don't Die July. This is my first review of one of the special edition books from Evernight that I have received. Today we're talking about Japanese Gothic by Kylie Baker. So Bat Eater went absolutely mental last year and I've still not gotten to it. This was already on my list and then it came in the Evernight box, so that was quite nice. If you haven't seen this version, this is the Evernight special edition. That is the dust jacket, which wraps around. And then you have the edges, which I wasn't struck on, I'll be honest, before I read the book. But now I've read the book, actually, they make so much more sense. And then you have the gorgeous hardcover for this. The hardcover is absolutely stunning. And then you have the even more stunning interior artwork as well. That's the front pages. That is the back. This also comes with a bonus chapter at the end, which I believe is exclusive to Evernight. So that was interesting as well. I didn't know that was a thing. But that's the book we're talking about today. So let's just dive into how I found it. So, as you can tell by the title, Japanese Gothic is a Gothic horror inspired by a couple of different elements of Japanese mythology and folklore. And it's a really, really interesting mashup here that works especially well, largely because of the two different points of view in here and the way that they are both anchored, which is really, really interestingly done. We have two main characters. Our first one is Lee Turner, an American student set in the present day who has basically fled to Japan following the mysterious death of their roommate, which they may or may not have caused. We discover very early on that Lee is not the most reliable of narrators for us as the reader. They seem to have some supernatural abilities, especially the ability to see ghosts, first of all, and also to be able to tell when people are lying to them, specifically. And as a result of this, they heavily self-medicate with sedatives. Our other point of view is from the character's point of view of Sen. Sen is the daughter of a disgraced samurai from 1877, set just after the Satsuma Rebellion in Japan, when her father returns home having been unsuccessful as part of the samurai revolt. And straight off the bat, we have one of our primary themes of the story here, the effects of shame on both sides of this. In Lee's case, his level of shame because he kind of remembers bits about his mother and the day that things happened but couldn't stop it, the shame of losing her, and the shame of some of the things that he has done since, as well as the damaged relationship with his father. In Sen's point of view, it's dealing with the inherited shame of her father, who did not do the honourable thing after losing as samurai are often expected to do, and still returned home. And this is a family that's living basically in exile. Shame of their own legacy, but also shame at not being able to get her father's approval. Now, I'm going to say here, the father figures in this absolutely horrendous. This is not a how-to parent book. Let's get that clear. Both of the fathers in this book are horrendous characters. Really, really dislikable. But over the course of this story, we have, from Lee's point of view, this house that doesn't quite feel right. Something feels off, and he believes he sees ghosts. This ghost ends up being Sen. From Sen's point of view, they're still in 1877, and they think that Lee is a demon coming to tempt them. And you have this really, really interplay that gets even more complicated as we realise that this might not be a straightforward ghost story from either of the points of view, as these two characters interact and begin to realise that in some ways they don't trust each other initially, but you have this beginning to get to like each other, but this sense of inevitability. Sen is going to die. There's no way to change that, and Sen is unwilling to change that because of the unwillingness to turn her back on a family. Whereas Lee is trying to unlock the memories of his mother and what happened that day, as well as what happened more recently in New York. And this makes this quite a complex narrative, as we can't totally trust everything that we're being shown or everything that we're being told. And it would fall flat if it wasn't for the fact that, number one, the atmosphere is absolutely amazing in this. Possibly the most atmospheric book I have read this year. But also the way that this ties together at the end. Now, I mentioned previously this links into two different aspects of folk tales, and it is actually split down the narrative here. From Lee's point of view, this feels a lot more like a more traditional yokai story, a story of a ghost or a spirit. Set in the present day, Lee is convinced that he is seeing a ghost from the past that is haunting him, and is finding all these weird things around the house that show that the house is haunted and that something otherworldly and supernatural is going on. Sen's story, however, is far more anchored in a Japanese folktale, specifically the folktale of Urashima Taro. So this folktale is the story of a Japanese fisherman who saved a turtle and as reward was given the ability to visit a underwater dragon palace. However, when he returned home, centuries had passed and everyone he knew had gone. Very much an anchor for Sen's story, who is going through something very, very similar. And it's really, really interesting peeling back the memories of the characters here. This is kind of the key thing, as especially from Lee's point of view, as bits of those memories become unlocked. And it feels like we're putting a puzzle together and we don't have all the pieces. And even when we do get the pieces, they're not the pieces that fit where we expect them to do, which does make this quite a complex read at times. But the atmosphere really drags it through. And the way that this ties off at the end, I didn't get it straight away. I had to stop and sit with it and try and unpuzzle it. And then when it clicked, it's like oh, that's clever moment. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this one. This is my first of the Evernight books I've read so far, and this is a really, really good start. So, final thoughts on this. It took me a little bit of time to come down to how I would rate this because it felt like a book that was difficult for me to rate. However, the way that this clicked once it eventually did, and it was a little bit after finishing it that it did, and how smart everything ties together at the end, I really do appreciate. And this is dripping in a lot of the things that I like in horror. It has actual real life folk roots, which therefore got me to go off and look things up and investigate some things beyond what the book actually tells us, which I love when a book gets me to do that, when it piques my interest and curiosity like that. I also like the fact that this does link to real world events, specifically the Satsuma Rebellion in Japan, which again, similar sort of thing. It's encouraging me to go up and look stuff up just to give me some more context. You don't need that context for the story, but if you're someone like me who likes to have their interest piqued in real world events, this book did that for me, which I appreciate a great deal. It's absolutely dripping with atmosphere. The pace is quite slow, though, something to bear in mind. And it can leave you feeling a bit unsteady while reading it due to how unreliable Lee in particular as a narrator is. And as we're being given these puzzle pieces, the stuff doesn't quite fit. So some people might find that quite an infuriating approach and infuriating read, but I personally enjoyed it. Overall, I am giving this 4.5 stars out of 5 after a little bit of time thinking about it. In terms of the Don't Die July bingo board then, and this hits folk horror first off, so that's that one ticked off. That's a bingo along the bottom row for that one. You could potentially put this down as well for haunted location and either small town horror or isolation horror, depending how you interpret where this is set. There is a small town nearby. Nobody actually comes to this location though, other than our primary characters. So I would personally argue isolation, especially from Sen's point of view and Lee's point of view. This is somewhere they've come to get away from people, so it's a self-isolation in that point of view as well. But that's my review for Japanese Gothic. Have you read it? What do you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all soon.